I do my own self-work and improve the relationship with my family, and I see it improving. Doesn't mean they're changing, but I'm changing, and I can deal with the relationship better because of my own work. If I change or work on my own self-regulation in the face of their dysfunctional behavior, they don't improve or become more willing to self-regulate, then no contact may be the option. Julie Hall, in her book, The Narcissist in Your Life, writes, as an adult child of a narcissist, you are confronting the reality that your parent or parents cannot reciprocate all but the most primitive form of love, far from the unconditional love we all hope to give and receive within our families. In some cases, limited or no contact with your parents may be your only way to avoid conflict and further harm. Everyone has the right to their own relationships and decisions about those relationships. And I hope we will remember that when dealing with other people who have toxic or narcissistic families. It's a complicated issue because in the field we see so many different types of narcissists. Some are more manageable than others. There are also many different types of family dynamics. So we want to be careful about judging others, and we want to be thoughtful about judging our own situation. Each person must make their own choice about going low or no contact with family members. I believe that becoming less enmeshed can put less reactive pressure on the relationship and could possibly avoid a need to go no contact. Also, if I become more neutral or more detached and I achieve a more consistent or stronger sense of self, that can bring about less conflict or distress. And again, maybe no contact can be avoided. However, there are many cases in which just the opposite would occur. My detaching, resisting enmeshment, having a stronger sense of self just exacerbates an already highly charged relationship that's very difficult to manage. If there is no direct abuse or harm, then I suggest working on becoming less sensitive and becoming more neutral about their craziness, beliefs, and way of thinking. I would work on becoming more detached, becoming more a confident self, working on increasing a more I don't care or a so what mentality. I would work on those first. And then it may become more clear what you want to do and need to do with a no contact decision. Number 2, do my family members or member have no respect for my boundaries and treat me as a scapegoat? It is difficult to build and maintain a healthy sense of self while participating in a toxic environment, while being connected with a very narcissistic family super self. That can be very difficult. And I think being treated as a scapegoat is very emotionally harmful. And even if I've done some growing up, even if I've worked on some detachment work, if I've healed and dealt with and can manage some of my triggers, maybe manage some of their triggers, I've gotten professional advice and guidance about the relationship, possibilities of this relationship and the family members, and what could I expect in the future. With little or no change or little or no willingness or ability demonstrated by this family member or family members to self-regulate, then I have a difficult choice. I've done some work to focus on me. Now I must focus on the toxic relationship and make some decisions about it. Number 3, can the relationship be managed in a way which would keep from disrupting my inner peace and emotional well-being? I think this question is kind of self-explanatory. Again, I believe that all relationships have some irritation in them. I believe we need some tolerance for mistakes and occasionally hurts in relationships. But I believe in zero tolerance for abuse. Fourthly, is there too much significant emotional, physical, or financial harm to continue in the relationship? Is there currently any legal, financial, physical, or emotional trauma that's occurring right now? This question should be asked so I can bring myself out of my own denial. And as I've mentioned in many of my videos, denial can be a difficult thing to cut through when it comes to family. You would be surprised how just using adult children of alcoholics, how obvious the alcoholic disease was going on in the family and how obvious there were consequences of it. And adult children of alcoholics will continue to disbelieve their parent was alcoholic. The same is true for narcissists. How many adult children have narcissistic parents and haven't even thought of that option or don't believe that? And again, that denial can be very strong to cut through. Fifth, do my nerves never seem to relax, or I'm emotionally triggered so much that the relationship interferes with my emotional well-being, physical health, mental stability, and other relationships in my life? In other words, if I have a narcissistic parent that creates conflict for me and my spouse, then this is another drama, trauma, and problem that shouldn't be occurring because it's going out beyond the relationship between my parent and I. And so when I also cannot relax or calm down, and that's what I've seen when people who have chosen no contact, it takes a while, but eventually their nerve endings and more calmness begins to show itself in their life, and they can actually relax more. For personal mental health, we must have times of rest, calmness, less stimulation, inner peace, and the renewal of our emotional fuel tank. And it requires us to avoid highly charged relationships for periods of time. And again, if you don't feel like you can ever get your emotional fuel tank filled because of the constant conflict and narcissistic abuse, then we have to begin to make some decisions. If we cannot find this time that we need to rest, relax, renew, even with our attempts at boundary setting due to our relationship with the toxic family member, then again, we may want to consider going no contact. Because I've found people get worn down, worn out, they want to take a break, and the narcissistic parent or family member will not accept that. Well, it doesn't matter whether they accept it. It's what they need to do for themselves. And if they're not going to accept what you need to do for yourself, now we're starting to get into a traumatizing relationship. Number 6, am I ready to take responsibility for my choice to go no contact and the struggles this decision will bring? And that could mean financially, emotionally, or in other areas. Going no contact, even low contact, but certainly no contact, has upsides and downsides. We want to consider the downsides fully before making that decision. This will provide a healthier and recovery-oriented experience for the time I am going no contact. Going no contact with parents or family members can be quite difficult also. It may be necessary, but it has downsides. What are some of the upsides? A greater sense of peace, less conflict or no conflict, less tension, less emotional burnout, greater detachment, freedom from control or shaming, guilting, gaslighting, manipulating. We can come out from under the shadow of our family super self. It can provide you with a break so you can be more effective doing your own work on yourself. Less chaos, less emotional drama, and less emotional noise. With this distance, we may be more open to forgiving, which provides a benefit for us. With all of the emotional noise going on in the present relationship, if we go no contact, we may be able to get to a space we can actually let go more easily. What are some of the downsides for going no contact? As I've talked with people over the years and struggles that they have had, as well as myself, loneliness at holiday times. Internal conflict over attending family gatherings, such as funerals, weddings, 4th of July, holidays, all kinds of events that we all kind of go to as a matter of course. We can feel shame or embarrassment over the family break, particularly around others who don't understand. Oh, you haven't seen your mother and father for 2 years? What's wrong with you? Is often the felt message from other people. What have you done wrong? When actually they really don't understand. And others who really don't get it and who would not understand that kind of dynamic, they also may not, and they may be in denial, that parents could even be that way. You could have malignant narcissistic parents. There are people who don't even believe that's even possible. We could also experience a loss of inheritance. That may anger mom and dad who hold the family estate or whatever, and you may be a casualty of that. There are legal issues that can be problems, especially if lives have been intertwined in some ways, financially, legally, business-wise. Societal guilt over not caring for elderly parents. How old are your parents? And do you see them often? Are you taking care of them? And when you say, no, I don't see them, well, what kind of adult child must you be that you're not taking care of your elderly parent, who also maybe didn't really know how to love or didn't love us for all of our lives? So they don't understand that. Anger and resentment could also build in me if I'm the one going no contact. We can become more bitter during the no contact, and we want to become careful about that, and we want to work on that issue that doesn't happen. Resentment and bitterness from siblings or extended family. We can have resentment from them, we can feel resentment to them. And it can be very difficult because they are on the parent side, they're not on your side. This part of the family is on your side or understands or is neutral. That part of the family doesn't understand, and they can be more negative and just don't understand why you don't just play the family game the way we're all supposed to play the family game in our society. Number 7, am I providing 80% of the emotional adjusting and maintaining of the relationship, and they're providing 20% or less, or even none? Toxic or narcissistic family members are very high maintenance emotionally. Am I doing all the maintenance of the relationship? And, I really think that's a very important point, that we want to do all of those things to keep the relationship going, to keep it civil, to keep it less reactive, to keep it less harmful. And we do all the dancing so that doesn't happen. They don't do the adjusting, nor do they do the self-regulating. And I may be the aware one. I have to go read all these articles or become more psychologically informed so that I could handle their illness and abuse. And then even be criticized for being the one who's 80% self-regulating so that the relationship can work. I must do heroic self-regulation, and they feel little to no need to regulate themselves at all for the sake of having a decent relationship. If I'm bearing the brunt of all of the unhappiness and all of the work, then we need to start evaluating, is this relationship one I want to continue? Number 8, have I heard from other mature people or mature professionals that I should go no contact with this family member? Many have told me my relationship with this family member or family is very unhealthy. Many people have told me this, and that I may want to consider reducing contact with them. There may be sponsors or recovery friends, therapists, other professionals, even attorneys have even advised you may want to have little to no contact with these family members. They are not well. If that has happened, then that's another point in favor of going no contact. Number 9, I have felt strongly I should go no contact, but I just cannot do it mentally or emotionally. And I worry about my kids' relationship with this family member if I do so. I know there are many who have worked on this struggle. If we know we should go no contact but cannot do it mentally or emotionally, get help. If we know we should go no contact but we feel guilt, shame, or societal guilt or shame about your kids not having a relationship with that part of the family, get help. Many whom I have worked with and who struggle with this dilemma, again, might say, my parents treat my kids great. They spoil them terribly. They treat me terribly. Spoil them terribly. Treat me terribly. It is so difficult for them to withhold kids from narcissistic grandparents who spoil their children but keep up the barrage of trouble for them. And so the kids have a great time. They go to Disneyland. They go to Disney World. They enjoy all the things that grandparents can provide. Pools and all kinds of toys, gifts, and things such as that. And of course your kids adore that. And they end up being Disney grandparents. And often narcissistic grandparents are Disney grandparents. They may also provide childcare. And again, that can be problematic. That's one of the costs we have to count if we're going to go no contact. And again, I think when you involve children whom are having a different relationship with the narcissist than you are, then I think you could address that with a professional. What are the upsides? What are the downsides? What is manageable and what is not? What is the future going to look like? We definitely want to avoid having narcissistic grandparents alienating our kids from us. We can always tell our children, this is a parental decision I have made on my behalf and the family's behalf and your behalf. But you may not be able to understand it until you are older and an adult. It is your responsibility to raise your kids, not your parents' responsibility. This is a difficult dilemma, and I understand that. And again, get professional advice and guidance, I would strongly recommend. Finally, if you're experiencing any abuse, I would strongly urge you to get help now from a mental health professional. And if you choose to go no contact, continue to seek help from a therapist or a coach, because there's phases to go through in going no contact. I hope you will subscribe, like, and comment on this video. I want to thank you for watching. Have a great day, and be wise. Hey, hi, everybody. My name is Jerry Wise, and I want to ask you, does your spouse or your partner have a dysfunctional family? And do you know what to do if that's the case? Today, I want to talk about that briefly. First of all, there are so many different types of dysfunctional families, as you well may imagine. Smothering and enmeshed families, controlling, critical and argumentative families, cutoff families, abusive families, delusional and distortive families, families who just make things up out of whole cloth, families who distort what's being said and done and what they see. There are volatile families or moody families where you never know who you're going to get when you get together or when you call them or when you never know what mood they're going to be in. There are bigoted, racist, non-accepting, and families full of prejudice. And maybe that has affected you as well. Because not always do we marry someone our family is really thrilled with. Whether they are of a different religion, a different skin color, a different background, that can all be problematic, and there can be prejudice and racism and non-accepting going on within spouses' families. Then there are the alcoholic and drug-addicted families. Those are not easy to deal with either. And what do we do? In all of these types of families, and even other types of families, you can talk with someone, and I would recommend getting some help from a coach or a therapist. You can talk about the distinct kinds of problems that may come up with those specific types of dysfunctions. However, there are some universal things that I want to share with you today that kind of fall in the category of whatever type of dysfunctional family. These are some things to remember to do. And if you'd like to learn more about those and go into greater depth, I have an online program listed below in the description that you can go to and check out. There's also an online training that's free that's down there as well. So there's a couple links you can check out if you'd like to know more, learn more, and know how to deal with these things more effectively. So, given there's so many different types of families out there, first of all, we want to remember that we will need to probably be setting boundaries with the in-laws and maybe even with our spouses or with our partners. That boundaries are very important. And you may want to learn about boundaries more. There's some great books out there on boundaries. My online program has a whole segment on boundaries, both internal boundaries and external boundaries. And what I've found in some of the boundary books is they don't talk about both. They either only talk about external, and then they kind of vaguely talk about internal boundaries. But we need internal and external boundaries. So we will need to be setting some boundaries with partner or spouse and the in-laws in an appropriate way so that we can be adults and mature with our in-laws, and that we can remain adult and mature whether they do or not. And that's very important for us. Also, we will want to decide what type of relationship I want to have with these in-laws, particularly if they're dysfunctional. What kind of relationship do I want to have? And it's okay to ask that question. Only I tell people, given exactly how they are now, what type of relationship would you like to have with them? Not what type of pie in the sky relationship would you want to have with them, or what type of relationship you'd like to have with them if they were different. No, the way they are right now, what type of relationship would you like to have with them? And that's the best question, I think, to ask. And the same is true for you and your partner. You can talk to your partner or your spouse about, well, what kind of relationship do we want to have with your family and with your parents? That's not just based on family expectations, family rules, the family super self, meaning how you're supposed to behave in the family, because then it's just an extension of our childhood into our adulthood. I'm an adult. I'm not a child anymore. I don't have to go to that holiday on that day. I don't have to do that anymore if I don't want to. And what kind of relationship do I want to have? And if you're going to be setting some boundaries, you need some help. Check out help with a coach or therapist. I have coaches, or you can work with me. You can check online and we'd be happy to meet with you and help you with those things. So we have to decide what kind of relationship we want to have with them, whatever their dysfunction, from drug addiction all the way to just good old and neurotic and anxious, and there's a whole continuum all the way from somebody who's just kind of a pain to somebody who is malignantly toxic. So there's a whole continuum. And I'm sharing with you some general advice that would apply to all the continuum. Then there'd be some unique advice depending upon where families land on that continuum. I think it's important we remember, we married our spouses. We also kind of married his family or her family. Now, that doesn't mean all bets are off. That doesn't mean if I marry your family as well in some way, it doesn't exclude being respected. It doesn't exclude me having a self. That's not what being married to your family means. It just means we have some shared life with your family. But that doesn't mean I can be treated any old way, any old time. Particularly if a partner or spouse is very, very heavily connected with their family, then it's an awful lot to expect them to just cut all that off. And if it's problematic and they don't see it, then you need to get some help for yourselves as a couple. And again, there is some shared life with that, whether we like it or not, whether we don't want it or do want it. That comes with the package, because a family has a super self and an emotional process or an emotional Wi-Fi that's going out. And if you marry into that, you're going to be affected by that emotional Wi-Fi, is what I'm saying. And that we discuss a lot more in the online program. Don't try to change your partner or spouse's family. And certainly don't try to do it without the support of your partner. They should probably take the lead. The blood child should, I think, be the point man on addressing their family. if my mother is giving my wife a hard time and is just being unreasonable, and Susan or Mary or whoever is complaining to me about it, and it's just not appropriate, then I might go to my mother and say, Mom, we're on the same team, my wife and I, and that's not okay, and you need to stop doing that. You really need to stop doing that, and you're hearing that from your son, who is your biological son. Now, I'm not saying spouses can't stand up for themselves. They can. And if Susan or Mary, whoever I'm married to, wants to address my mother about that, they can. And hopefully my mother will take it and will take it in and use that information. If she doesn't, then I think it's good for the blood relative to step in. The wife with her family, the husband with his family. Because I think there's, in some ways, almost a stronger voice, and then there's less likely they're going to scapegoat the partner. Oh, well, Mary's just a troublemaker. Our son, Jerry, is so wonderful. But Mary came and talked to me about, oh, no, I don't want that. I'm going to talk to you, Mom. I can be the scapegoat, not her. You can blame me. That's perfectly fine. So, and don't try to change your partner's family. It usually doesn't work very well anyway, because otherwise you will be scapegoated, you'll be blamed, and probably ostracized, because that happens so frequently when we do that. And we particularly have that problem if your spouse or your partner is not on the same page with you and there's not unity. So if a spouse or partner has a dysfunctional family, you have to get that unity going with the two of you. Otherwise, the family will overwhelm your unity. And we can talk more about that in other videos. So I would suggest getting a coach or getting a therapist. Don't try to go it alone if you can't come to some agreement with your partner. Talk with your partner about the problems and about the expectations. Hey, honey, hey, Don, what do you expect from me with your family? This is how your family kind of treats me. What do you expect from me? And what expectations do you have for your family and how they treat me? And here are some of the problems that I've seen. Can we work through those or talk about those, Don? Remember that you and your partner have choices. You can go full contact with the dysfunctional family with boundaries or healthy boundaries. You can go low contact. You can go no contact with an emergency plan. If somebody were to get sick or someone goes to the hospital or whatever, they could let you know. Or some people go full no contact and they don't want to hear anything no matter what happens. There's such toxicity here. It doesn't matter what happens in the family. It's unfortunate, but that if they're on this end of the continuum down here, very, very toxic, there are people like, I don't want to have any. I don't care what goes on. Because then we're going to pretend to be normal within a very abnormal family. Oh, well, you don't want to know if your father passes away? Well, under normal circumstances, I would. And I think most people would like to know if their father passed away. But there are circumstances in which it may not matter one bit. Maybe that father has been extremely abusive, manipulative, narcissistic, mean, hurtful. Then it's like, do I really care? And I don't have to care. Even though society thinks I'm bad for not caring, walk in my shoes, and then you decide whether you would care or not. Don't talk to me about your rules for your family, because you may not have a family that's anything like mine. So, many people think, well, just do the normal rules. Don't do normal rules for abnormal families. It doesn't work. Also, avoid family triangles. It's very easy to get caught up in triangles. Mom-in-law talks to daughter-in-law about the spouse or husband. That can be a problem. Mom talks to son about the wife. That can be a problem. Sister talks to brother about the wife, in-law. That we have all these triangles that can go on. And we want to avoid those triangles. So if I'm the blood relative, the blood family, and they come to me and say, oh, we need to talk to you about, Mary. Well, what seems to be the problem? I mean, why are you coming to me? Oh, well, she just said something really mean to Sister Madeline. Okay. Did you think Madeline maybe should go and talk to Mary? Don't you think that? I think that would be a better approach than me going to Mary. Because if I go to Mary, she's going to know exactly where this came from. It's not coming from me. She's going to know I talked to you about it. And that's not going to help the dynamics. So I think it's better if we have one-on-one communication, if at all possible. And if we can't, then maybe we need a therapist, maybe we need a coach to help us with that. It is certainly okay to stand up for yourself with the in-laws. But we stand up for ourselves to protect ourselves, not to change them. Certainly we can ask them if that, I would rather you not do that. I don't like it when you call me a little baby. I don't like that. Please don't do that. But if they continue to do it, then I can stand up for myself and say, well, if you're going to continue to do that, then I am probably going to have to withdraw more. I'm going to have to be more detached because I'm not going to take that. And that's unfortunate because I thought we could have a better relationship. So it's okay to stand up for yourself, but it's very difficult to go in there and try to change someone else. I've been trying to change other people for 45 plus years. And what I've found is I have a lot more success if I bring me to the situation and let them decide how they want to be. That usually is a more powerful dynamic. I hope you found this video helpful. I want to introduce you to my new step-by-step program designed to help you break free from the toxic relationship dynamics in your family, to heal your relationships and build the real self you were never allowed to have. I personally wish I would have had access to a program like this early in my own journey. This program is an investment in yourself, your relationships, your healing, and your life. To learn more about the program, click on the program link below provided in the description. I truly believe it will have a profound effect on your life. Hi everyone. My name is Jerry Wise and I'm a life and relationship coach. I've been helping people for 40 years to achieve a greater sense of self-differentiation and working on their family relationships, marital relationships, friend relationships, and the struggles that they have had with relationships. I specialize in adult children of alcoholics, adult children of narcissists, and I want to speak to the ACOAs and the ACONs and those who grew up in dysfunctional families, and particularly around this virus crisis that we've been having. This video is entitled Adult Children of Alcoholics and the Coronavirus Crisis. I've been talking a lot with clients who are adult children of alcoholics, and this crisis has been a real big punch to the gut for many people. And I'm not sure just ACOAs or ACONs, but for all of us, it's a punch in the gut. But I think it's particularly acute for those who grow up in dysfunctional families. They have felt like they've been regressing back to being more childlike inside, or they feel more like a child, even though they may be a 50-year adult. They feel like they felt less adult-like and more childlike, and it feels very disorienting to them. Even if they've been doing well for quite some time in their recovery and in their work, They're finding this crisis as being something that's dredging up some things from long ago. Many are struggling with a new awareness of their reactivity. They're finding themselves being more reactive. And they've reported these kinds of things to me. They've felt isolated, having a sense of loss, a loss of normal support, the difficulties in not being able to hug other people that they care about, and you have to, say goodbye to your grandchildren without hugging them, or relatives come to the door and you speak to them, but you don't want to have them come in, and it's really been a difficult time. Others have reported having bad dreams, having nightmares, and again, they've said, I haven't had those for a long, long time. Now they're starting to experience some nightmares and some bad dreams. There's a widespread fear of scarcity, fear of abandonment, feeling a strong sense of victimhood that they hadn't had for a while. Unhealthy family members may have become more dependent or needy on them, particularly unhealthy family members. A loss of identity, feeling more caught up in chaos and drama that they had left behind long ago. A tendency to avoid feelings. They might feel nervous and anxious and have difficulty calming down. They have become more reactors than actors, and so they find themselves overreacting. They have reduced their self-care because they feel more lethargic. They might even feel depressed. There are some who have gone out and bought I had one client bought $1,500 worth of groceries so that if somebody around her, she would have food for them. And again, it's that over-functioning part. Not that it's not kind on her part, but it's that over-functioning ACOA part that will go out and buy all these things to make sure everybody's okay, because we learned that long ago. There can be increased anger. They've reported resentment, feeling hurt, even pain. Have had several ACOAs who have had gut pain, chest pain, back pain, again, that they haven't had for a long time. They've reported judging themselves more harshly and other people as well. They have this higher anxiety due to an uncertain future and many other symptoms as well. But most all of these symptoms connect with the adult child of an alcoholic symptoms. And if you read Janet Woititz's book, Woitiz, she talks about the 14 characteristics of an adult child of an alcoholic. And those symptoms really get triggered and have during this crisis. And one of the reasons why it does is because our society and the crisis that is happening, our society turns more into like our alcoholic home growing up. And that our society is that dysfunctional family that we grew up in, and how people treat each other at the grocery store, how there's scarcity, and those kinds of problems arise. And again, society becomes a larger family of origin, but one that's dysfunctional, and we find ourselves operating in that. ACOAs will report denial, anger, high anxiety, irrational responses, worried about the unpredictability of other people, a focus on the crisis and not on themselves or people, a loss of freedom, scarcity of things we want and need. There is the coronavirus, and then there's the emotional virus, which has infected everyone. And that emotional virus will hit a number of people in different ways. And for ACOAs and ACONs, it really can be a punch to the gut. This crisis can trigger our traumas from growing up. So remember that. I'm going to talk more about how societies like that alcoholic family that we grew up in. The what we certainly want to do is to work to detach from the drama and the chaos, make a place of solace and peace at home and in your own life, taking extra care to do that. We want to feel our feelings. We want to explore the history of our feelings. If we're feeling angry, resentful, take a look at where we learned anger, resentment, fear. Take a look back where you learned that. It will give you information and insight into what you're feeling now as a result of the crisis. See how the crisis and everything happening around you is a repeat of growing up in an alcoholic family or a dysfunctional family. And by doing that, I think we can gain some distance from the crisis and gain some detachment if we can see, hey, these are old feelings that are being dug up, and these are old reactivities that we have. Also, with the reduced travel, and don't go out unless it's essential kind of rules. Well, of course, that's a go to your room. We're all told by society to go to your room and stay there. Go to your house and stay there. Well, for many of folks who grew up in dysfunctional homes, go to your room and stay there was not a pleasant thing. And it was very difficult. And then we end up being isolated there. Well, being isolated growing up was very common. We have parents who are parents or leaders are fighting. Our parents fought growing up, now the leaders are fighting. Politicians, health professionals. The governor says one thing, the president says another, the health officials say another. And everybody's fighting about the data, the information, what you should do. And that raises our anxiety that my parents are not being adult for me right now. And many times our leaders aren't being adults for us right now. We certainly have an uncertainty of the future, which we experienced growing up as well. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's dad going to be like when he comes home drunk after work? He stops by the bar and comes home, and what's that going to be like? Every day, we don't know what's going to happen. And in a crisis, every day you don't know what's going to happen. And that mirrors the growing up in a dysfunctional home. Fear sets in with scarcity and loss. For many ACONs or ACOAs, they grew up with some poverty or some financial insecurity. I don't know if there's going to be enough food. We were poor. Dad was an alcoholic. Mom was an alcoholic. We didn't have much. In fact, I had to go scrounge around for things, you might say, if you were growing up. And so scarcity is a problem and a fear. And a loss of that security and loss of, everything's going to be okay. We didn't have parents telling us everything's going to be okay. I'm going to be here for you as a parent. Share with me your feelings. That wasn't happening in alcoholic homes. It wasn't happening in adult children in narcissistic homes. The narcissist didn't care what you were feeling or thinking, or the narcissistic parent. It's just, come on, just grow up and stop crying. Why is this bothering you? So we can feel shut down and not heard. And if we're isolated, then we don't feel heard. There can be increased anxiety at work, in which bosses can become more demanding or more reactive at work. And we find relationships can struggle there also. I've also talked in the past about how workplaces end up being alcoholic families, but it's called the workplace. And it acts very much like an alcoholic home. And we wonder why we struggle with that. Because it's very much acting like what we knew when we grew up. Marriage relationships can become tense and stressful. And so your home becomes more like the home you grew up in. Even though it might have been calm for a while, now it gets disrupted with the virus. I have many couples arguing about the coronavirus, about being quarantined and restricted movements. One husband's mad that the wife went out to the grocery store, now it's come back and infected the kids. And then they got to argue over that even very intensely. And they will fight over, well, do you think we should have this trip or should not take this trip? And then they will disagree on how safe and what you should do to keep yourself safe. And if they disagree, then that becomes more tension and stress in the family. And when they're stressed, that pushes enmeshment. And that's that if you don't agree with my beliefs, then you're wrong. And I'm angry and resentful at you. Because you have to believe exactly the way I believe. When we all believe a little different about the virus and about the crisis. We all have some different opinions. We all have differing experiences of knowledge or science or just awareness of things. And so we're going to disagree. We want to be sure to allow others to have their fears, have their opinions and beliefs, and even irrational beliefs, conspiracy theories, which I've heard for weeks now, and don't try to change others. Just hold on to your own opinions and your own beliefs. Be self-differentiated. It's you stay on your side of the tennis net, as I use the tennis court analogy. You stay on your side of the tennis net, I'll stay on my side of the tennis net. You can have all those beliefs you want, and these are my beliefs. I may not believe that particular conspiracy theory, but you can if you want to. I hope it doesn't get you too reactive about that. And certainly I don't know everything about what's going on in the world or what's happened and all of those kinds of things, and we have to rely on information we're given because it's not firsthand for me. So we all have to rely on what we're being told. Be careful about, as an adult child of an alcoholic, doing greater amounts of people-pleasing, being over-responsible, and having no boundaries. Be careful about being pushed into that as a result of the crisis. Take care of yourself, not just take care of others. Resist over-functioning, which is easy to do. You are not responsible for everything and everyone. In my own life, as I see clients, I use a portion of that money to help other people who are around and who are friends of mine who are out of work. They're laid off. They may only go live from check to check. And so how can I take my limited abundance and be of help to them and help them through this difficult time? I can't save the whole world, but I can be a help to those who are right on that edge. Learn to say no, or keep saying no. It's okay to say no. You don't have to please everyone because they are anxious, upset, or fearful. You don't have to please them. And you are not responsible or the cause of their feelings. And again, if somebody's upset, and then they share some knowledge or what they believe they have knowledge about the coronavirus, and I don't agree with it, then they can get irritable and upset with me. And it's like, wait a minute, I don't have to share that same belief, and it's okay for you to believe that, but I'm not going to feel forced to have to believe what you believe. I could be wrong, but I could be wrong about anything in life. I can only go by what my subjectivity and what my paradigm is. I can't live out of your paradigm. I can only live out of mine. And so, this is my best guess at these. This is your best guess. And we're both just human, and we both can err. And that's okay. That's going to happen. Be careful about ignoring your own feelings and your own impulses. Identify and explore your feelings. Don't just push them down and deny them. And I've had greater number of clients doing that because they feel more stressed and anxious, and they can't, and they're cutting off that healthy feelings that they have so they can identify what's going on with them. Because for so many years they block their feelings and they push them down. ACOAs and ACONs are experts at doing that to survive. Not because they're defective or worthless or bad or stupid, That's what they learn growing up after years and years of experience. Controlling other people, which is another thing ACOAs might tend to do, and we learn to control other people because we had to control other people or work at controlling other people so that we could survive. And so we might tend to find ourselves doing that more during this crisis. Let go of control. Control you, not all of your environment or all the others around you. Let your family have their feelings, their actions, accept them. It's okay to have boundaries. And if someone is out, doesn't care about picking up the virus and is out there being maybe irresponsible in that way, you can have boundaries and say, hey, we can get together after the crisis is over. I don't want you to come and infect grandma, grandpa, kids, or whatever. That's your choice to just go do whatever you're doing. This is my choice to feel safe and to be responsible. Perfectionism is another concern we would have for ACOAs. Resist black and white thinking and right and wrong thinking. There's only A or B, right or wrong, black or white, all or nothing. And that's A and B thinking, which can keep us stuck and keep us very frustrated. Look for the C options. In other words, it may not be this, it may not be this. Okay, what's a third option that I could have? And usually those option C's are much more healthy. And usually an option C means I accept and take care of me, and I accept you. I don't have to do what you do, you don't have to do what I do, and I still love and regard you. Seeing myself as a victim. Another thing that happens with ACOAs and ACONs, you are not a victim, but an actor and a participant in your life. You're an adult now, and you have an adult who can parent the inner child, take care of the inner child, use the adult to act and for executive functioning, use the inner child to know what's going on inside of you and deep inside of you. How is that inner child doing with the crisis? How's the little Jerry doing with the crisis? How's the big Jerry doing with the crisis? And those are two different parts of us that we want to keep in touch with. And I do recommend like Inner Bonding by Margaret Paul and books like that, Charles Whitfield, Healing the Child Within, that we are aware of our inner child and how's that inner child dealing with the coronavirus. It seems like it's just us that's kind of out of control as adults, when it may be the inner child that's kind of out of control. We've been functioning well for a while. Now we need to recheck in with that inner child and see how they're doing with the crisis. How is your little you doing inside there? Reading into other people's actions and thoughts and beliefs or words. It's very easy to do, particularly if we're highly charged or sensitive or reactive. It's very easy to read into other people's actions, their telephone calls, what they say to you, and so we want to be very careful about reading into other people's actions. Many times, if I start to read into what they're saying, what they're thinking, I might stop and say, hey, I'm confused. Let me see if I'm clear. Is this what you're saying? Or could you explain that to me? Rather than me just jumping to the conclusion and reading into everything they're saying and doing. It's easy to do. Stop. Be calm. Calmness is everything. In a video that I did, it's about an hour and a half long. Calmness is everything. Stop. Be calm. Think versus reacting. And be generous with your interpretations of others. You want to be generous in your interpretation of what others are saying or doing. And remember, they're under an awful lot of stress too. The whole society is under stress. At the grocery store, and if they're not quite as polite, not quite as, then we give them a break and go, hey, let me just do my stuff and just go on. I might even say a positive word to them, and say, I know it must be difficult. I wanted to share some of these things with you because I know the crisis has really affected a lot of people, and a lot of people I've been talking to and who are clients of mine. I hope that you will visit my website, www.jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com, and I hope you'll join the site. You can do that by logging in and just putting your email address in there. I hope you'll join my YouTube channel, this channel that this video is on, Jerry Wise Relationship Systems, and I hope you'll subscribe to the channel so you get all the new videos. Join my Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram. We're putting a whole bunch of new things up on there. And on Facebook, I'm starting to do more live videos or live broadcasts on Facebook. There's lots of new things coming. I appreciate you listening to me today, and I hope you will be safe. Take care of yourself. Be generous with others. Not over-functioning, be generous. There's a difference. Be generous with others and work to be calm. Calm will help you see it through. Thanks for watching. Happy holidays, everyone. I'm sure for some of you, you may be saying, bah humbug. And for others of you, you may be saying, hooray, it's holiday time. And then some go, well, I don't celebrate that at all. What do I care? It's just a big mess that happens during this year. I wanted to share with you a video on a holiday theme because I think it brings up a lot of emotional issues for a lot of people. People can be very cut off about the holidays. They can be very enmeshed with the holidays. I truly find that the holidays are a time for many people, a time in which it is an emotional minefield. And I think for some obvious reasons. Because when you add all of the components of the holidays, you can see why we can really get off balance during the holidays. And learning how to stabilize ourselves can be really important. Back in the early 90s, I wrote an article. I was, for many years, a pastor and a priest and a family counselor for inpatient chemical dependency and worked with families and drug addiction and alcohol addiction. And for many of those families, holidays was not a good time. Lots of problems, lots of difficulties. And I remember writing an article, and I wanted to share a little bit of that article with you today in this video. So first of all, the holidays are an emotional minefield for many people, and to differing degrees. When you add family of origin, because often holidays means families, when you add expectations, when you add Madison Avenue expectations, when you add fantasies of what we hope to have happen, when you add past hurts or disappointments or pain, and then you add the stress of the overload of the many activities during holiday time, we now are set up for an emotional minefield in which we can step one way or step another and a bomb can go off. And we can find ourselves in a real spiral, either spiraling down into depression, spiraling with anxiety, spiraling with guilt. There are lots of problems that can occur. And I realize that for some people, holidays may be a nice time for them and it works out well. For a lot of people, it really does create this minefield of a problem. When I wrote the article back in the 1990s, I talked about the 4 Ds. And it was the 4 Ds of the holiday time. And the first D was disappointments. The second is dysfunction. The third was depression. And the fourth was destabilization. And these are all 4 things I want you to look out for this holiday. In terms of disappointments, I think you can kind of understand that a little bit from the standpoint of our Madison Avenue view of the holidays, or Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever holiday you celebrate during the winter. The expectations are very high for what it's supposed to be like. Whether it's the Norman Rockwell view of the holidays, we have the holiday in which mom and dad are trimming the tree and the 2 children are in their pajamas helping, a sleigh ride to grandma's house, fireplace glowing, a 30-pound turkey, and a large family gathering around the table with grandpa carving the meat, and hugs all around, and a partridge in a pear tree. The Norman Rockwell, Leave It to Beaver holidays is for many people what they had hoped for, what they had hoped would happen during the season. And what they find every year is it falls way short of the Norman Rockwell Christmas or the fantasy that we believe should be happening at our holiday time. And we can have lots of emotional reactions to that, because often our expectations are very high for what the holiday should be, ought to be. I think for women, there's a very strong and high expectation of them to perform in heroic ways during the holidays, buying all the Christmas, working a full-time job, cooking the meals, getting everybody ready, wrapping the gifts, and over-functioning in a very big way, and also making this perfect holiday happen for their families. And when that doesn't happen, I hear a lot of women talk about guilt and feeling as though they feel a sense of failure during the holidays. And for men, there may be a financial obligation or burden which they feel they have fallen short of, and they can't buy the Christmas they feel they ought to provide for their family. They may just disconnect from the holidays altogether. They may find it not a very enjoyable time for them. Also, if marriages have some conflict or struggles, then that can come into the holiday times as well, because now we have a highly charged environment. Well, if we already have some difficulty or problems, this is only going to make it's only going to turn the Bunsen burner up higher. The fire is going to go a little hotter during the holidays. And for us to be aware of that, we can do something about changing that. And for many of us, we may have learned Christmas and disappointment may go together. So we need to watch out for our disappointments, and we need to have realistic expectations about the holiday. And I think, in my mind, simplifying them in a very, very important way. Rather than having that Norman Rockwell Christmas, begin to have something simple that we can accomplish so that we can say we enjoyed that part of the holidays. And that was something that I chose and that I planned, and we accomplished that. Now, there may be a whole bunch of other stuff that goes on, but at least we have simplified what we expect the holidays to be. In terms of dysfunction, I think we need to be aware that this is a time when we need to kind of maybe set our problems on the shelf, whether for our family of origin or for our marriage. This is not the time to sort out all those problems. There's already enough stress, busyness, scheduling, financial issues. This is not a time to press in harder with the problems. It's actually a time to just set those aside and say, hey, we can look at those after the holidays. We can talk about that after the holidays. Let's put that up on the shelf and try to enjoy our time together as much as we can. And just because I put it on the holidays, just because I put those problems on the shelf doesn't mean they don't matter. It's just that I can table them until we're in a better place to maybe be able to have more energy and not another focus that's going on. Because you don't want to be having great big arguments on the way to grandma's house and then great big arguments on the way back on issues that happened back in July. That seems a rather foolish plan. So we really need to bring down the expectations, simplify our holiday, set the problems aside. We can always come back to those. And I tell couples, there's a time to work on problems and there's a time not to. And I think a lot of couples think a time to work on problems is 24/7. No, there needs to be a time where we don't. And we just kind of are with each other. And we are just able to put those on the shelf so that we can just be with one another for this time and enjoy it the best that we can. So we have the 2 Ds of disappointment and dysfunction. Then we have depression. And depression can happen. I think you've heard of SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. I think of HAD, which is holiday affective disorder, in which people become depressed or their mood shifts, it goes down, or they either get a significant amount of anxiety or they may get depressed and feel down because of all of the expectations that occurred during this time. They feel more a sense of maybe failure or falling short, whether financially, whether in expectations, or they feel pushed or pulled by family of origin expectations, pushed or pulled by kids, by spouses, and it really can throw us into a depression spiral. So we want to be very careful about not heaping on more stress during this holiday time and making sure we find time for ourselves. We find and plan things that we can enjoy and that we look forward to, even if they're simple or very small things. You can make your holiday time a better time. And I think also in past holidays there's been anger, resentment, cutoff that have happened within families, and that can also produce anger, feeling of powerlessness. And where there's anger and powerlessness, then you've got depression that's going to happen. You also may want to plan on getting in to talk to someone after the holidays. That can also feel better that, hey, I'm going to set that aside. We're going to go get some help after the holidays because we need to work on some problems. Or I need to work on my depression. And the 4th D is destabilization. And I've kind of already talked about that a little bit because the holidays or Christmas or this season really hits all of those emotional buttons. Because that's the time, again, when a lot of issues come up or are put in our face. Maybe we haven't had the best relationship with our family of origin. Well, now we got to go spend time with them. So now it's going to hit all those buttons. Our husband and our wife, we may not be getting along very well. Now the holidays have come, and it only accentuates that emotional pain because now we have the holidays, and now we're not even getting along. And it kind of spoils a lot of the holiday for us. So destabilization is not uncommon during the holidays. I think the more we begin to work on self-differentiation, self-esteem, a love of self in a healthy way, I don't mean selfish way, a love of self and being a self, the less destabilization happens and the more future holidays can be better. If you find yourself getting in all kinds of destabilization going on and spiraling and emotional problems and difficulties during the holidays, you really want to plan on getting some help because you don't have to stay there. You don't have to be that way. You may need to get some help so that your future holidays can be a lot better. And I think one of the points I made in the article was Christmas begins, or the holidays begin, with a healthy you. And they really do. That's when holidays start to turn more enjoyable, more satisfying, more fulfilling, when you have a healthier you. When we don't have a healthy us, then nothing else seems to be very enjoyable. And we trip and fall into potholes, and we find ourselves getting into all kinds of difficulties because we don't have that sense of self that's really important, that makes self-care happen during the holidays, and out of self-care comes an abundance of love and caring and joy. And I think that comes first out of self-care, because it's very hard for me to give to you if I don't know how to give to myself. it really becomes very difficult, and there are lots of traps with that. Whereas if I can give out of the abundance of what I feel inside, that certainly makes the giving a lot easier, a lot deeper, a lot richer, and it makes the holidays more enjoyable. I want to talk about some rules for relating to the family during Christmas or the holiday times. These might be helpful to you in your plan up to the holiday season here. You may want to use the holidays to be assertive with your family, but not confrontive. This is not the time to confront, either with spouse or with family of origin. It's okay to be assertive, and it's okay to declare your own sense of self that this is what I need or want, but confrontive is not going to be a good plan for the holidays. Remember, no one can meet your unmet childhood needs but you. No one can meet your unmet childhood needs but you. Neither your spouse nor your family of origin. Avoid emotional triangles with others. In other words, you be responsible for your behaviors, thoughts, and emotions. Let others be responsible for their behaviors, thoughts, and emotions. When we get into our family of origin, we find ourselves, lots of triangles can start to come up and push and pull us. Remember, you're responsible for you. Let others be responsible for them. Lower your expectations of your family. Stop hoping they will become the family you always wanted and grieve that loss. Because then you can see your family as they really are. They're human beings. They have their own problems. They have their own issues. They're not this way just to make you miserable. They're this way because that's just the way they are, and that's their issues. And if we can take off that mantle of them needing to make us happy, that can really make a big difference. Learn to forgive for the past. I think forgiveness during the holidays is a great time for a forgiveness theme. We really do need to let go and forgive, and that's not easy. If it's necessary, look elsewhere for your holiday fulfillment besides your family. In other words, if you've got these events that you have to do and they're not all that enjoyable, plan something enjoyable for you that you do look forward to. You may not be able to get out of going to grandma's or get out of, because you just don't feel you can really buck that system. Then go spend a minimal amount of time and show up, stay connected with your family in that way, but then plan something for you. And it may be outside your family or your family of origin. It may be with friends. It may be some activity that you would really enjoy. Plan safe holidays. Put some physical distance between you and your toxic family members. Avoid toxic members if necessary. In other words, if you've got a real toxic family that you're going to visit or whatever, you may not want to stay in their house. Stay in a motel. You don't have to stay with them. You can kind of put some distance between you and them. That way you're staying connected, but you're not in the middle of the toxicity. Work at letting the child play and experience the joy of Christmas or the joy of the holidays. We have a couple little children in the waiting room here today, and I was watching them, and I thought, how wonderful for these little kids. And they were just playing and innocent and having a great time. And during the holidays, I think it really is a time for the inner child in us to play. And if we can make room for that inner child in us to play during the holidays, that can make for a very special time. Don't drift through the holidays waiting for something wonderful to happen. Plan something wonderful. Don't just wait for it to happen. Plan something wonderful. If you're going to make some changes with your family of origin because you want to kind of self-differentiate, in other words, we want to change the schedule a little bit, or we don't want to do this, which has been our family's tradition for the last 30 years, you might let your family know a year in advance. In other words, tell them this year what changes you want to make for next year, rather than just coming and dropping the bomb and saying, okay, we don't want to do that. I don't know why we have to do that. Again, that's confrontive and angry. What you might want to do is, we'll do it this year, but next year our family's going to do this. So it'll be a little different for next year. And just wanted to let everybody know so they can plan for that. I think that's an easing into the changes and easing into the differentiation within the family. I think it goes a little smoother. You still may get some resistance, but at least you've acknowledged that this would be important for them. You're valuing and respecting them while making changes for you. And I think that's very important. How to have the best Christmas, how to have the best holiday. I think it's important that we try to plan a relaxed and loving time with our family and friends. And that takes planning. Have realistic and non-codependent expectations about gifts. In other words, gifts are not everything. People are important, not just gifts. Try to plan a more evenly paced holiday. And again, that takes planning and scheduling. Talk with your spouse, talk with your family of origin about what you need in terms of that plan. And then you might want to develop some strong personal and family traditions of your own choosing, something that you like and you do rather than what your parents did or what your grandparents did. Plan some traditions that you want. There was a great book I remember reading many years ago. I believe it's still in print, and I want to recommend it to you. It's entitled Unplug the Christmas Machine, How to Have the Christmas You Always Wanted. And it's by Joe Robinson and Gene Koppock. I would recommend that to you because I always liked the Christmas pledge. And the Christmas pledge was this: believing in the beauty and simplicity of Christmas, I commit myself to the following: to remember those who truly need my gifts, to express my love for my family and friends in more direct ways than presents, to re-educate myself to the spiritual growth of my family or to reconnect with my higher power, to examine my holiday activities in light of the true spirit of Christmas, and to initiate one act of peacemaking within my circle of family and friends. And I always like that pledge at Christmas time. I hope you'll pick up the book and take a look at it. She has some great ideas about making Christmas a wonderful time. I appreciate you listening today. If I can be of any help, my number and email address is on the screen. I hope you have a happy holiday. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.